So, if you want to find a method to test a product without spending a dime, this is the video for you. For I'll be teaching you how to search for a suitable product and how to test it in the market without any kind of investment. So, let's get right into it. Now, what I'm going to be going through is a framework and a process for how you can actually do the testing of a product without having to spend anything. You're probably like, that's clickbait. That's not true. Well, there is actually a way to do it if you do it intelligently. So first, you got to think about finding the ideal product. And the ideal product, it may be complicated for some people. They may overthink it and they want to do a bunch of market research. But if you're just starting out and you don't want to spend any cash and you want to test it out, I don't recommend going through all that work, but instead to look into your hobbies and interests. So to give you some examples, if you're into hiking, you probably know what gear is involved to have a good hiking experience, whether you're going to be spending the night in the woods and you need a tent, or you need some good hiking boots or a hiking backpack. You get the point. Look into your personal hobbies and interests and talk about things and think about things that you already use either on a daily basis or very frequently. Because the more you know about the product and the more you use it, the better you can market it to your target audience before you actually, invest into going into making a website and all that. So in this example, I'm going to be showing you anime figures because I'm a pretty big fan of Dragon Ball Super and all that. So you can go ahead and see in this example how we'll go through step by step. And you also probably have a circle of friends or family that know about the product that you're already interested in based on your hobbies. So like I said earlier, if you're in a hiking group, you probably know a handful of people that also like hiking and would also buy the products that you are thinking about. Now, within this group of friends and family, you want to make sure that they are understanding of you trying to start out this product test. So you want them to be somewhat close to you. You don't want them to be strangers because strangers are a lot less forgiving if there are mistakes because you are new to this. And at the end, you will be getting profits through this business. So let's talk about finding the right supplier. As in my example, I want to sell Dragon Ball Z figurines. So you got to select which platform to choose from. Now, you may have heard platforms like Alibaba and AliExpress, and yes, those are good plug and play platforms that you can start using because everything is in English and it's meant for the international market. But what if I were to tell you that there are even cheaper platforms like on 1688, Pinduoduo, and Taobao? There's many of them, and you can choose going straight to the supplier to get the cheapest pricing. In this video, I'm not going to go into detail on how to make payments on each one, but if you follow me on my channel, you can see many kinds of tutorials on exactly how to make a purchase when you're not inside of China. But I would recommend figuring out which platform to start out for first and choosing one of these Chinese platforms. So to kind of give you a small overview, 1688 is like the B2B version inside of China. It's meant for the domestic market, but the pricing is extremely competitive, way more competitive than Alibaba. The only issue is that everything is in Chinese. Pinduoduo, the middle one, is a platform for like social buying and social media. So if you see a product and you share it on social media and someone else wants to buy that product with you, well, at that point, then you can get the product at a discount. And lastly is Taobao. Taobao is like the Amazon inside of China where you can find everything you want. Literally anything I can think of, I can find on Taobao. And it's really easy to use once you get used to it. And sometimes they even accept foreign cards if you look correctly. What I like about all these platforms is that they have the search by picture function. So you can simply get a snapshot of what you're interested in buying or researching the pricing for, and you can see the results there. Now, depending on the platform you choose, it's important to know the turnaround time and inspections. Let me give you an example in my scenario. If I want to find like Dragon Ball Super or a Dragon Ball figurine, sometimes there's a couple business models that go into play. There's one where you just buy the product and they immediately ship it. And there's another one where they're kind of creating a design. And in that design, you have to make a deposit. And once they reach a certain number of deposits, like 10 customers, then they'll start production. So just be careful and know about the turnaround time, because if you're going to be testing this, you want to make it quick. You don't want to, at the last minute after the customer pays, says, oh, you'll get the product in 3 months. That's pretty unacceptable. You want to contact the supplier directly about the product dimensions and the weight. And this is super important when it comes to shipping to your final destination. So in my case, I'll just use an example of the USA. But a lot of these platforms, actually probably 99% of them, do not ship overseas. You're going to need to send the product from buying it on the platform to a Chinese address that can ship it for you overseas, also known as a freight forwarder. So they'll receive your product and then they'll be able to ship it overseas. But you need to know clearly what the dimensions are as well as the weight so that you can estimate the cost of the shipping, which I'll go into in a little bit later. And lastly, I recommend getting 2 or 3 suppliers. Don't put all your eggs in a basket. When you have 2 to 3 suppliers, you can test the quality of each one. Now, of course, if it's a high ticket item and it's very expensive, it may be a little bit too much to ask for when you come to get the customers from their friends and family or other people that are interested in the product. But when it comes to like simple and relatively cheap products, I would recommend getting 2 to 3 suppliers, look at their reviews, and then you can evaluate out of the 2 or 3 suppliers which one has the best quality, the fastest turnaround time, and that are really easy to work with. So as I mentioned before, my case is going to be a Dragon Ball Z statue. So this is just me searching on Taobao for a statue, and I thought this was really cool. So you can see the pricing on Taobao. What I like is that they tell you the price in Chinese RMB and also the pricing in USD, about the estimate there. But this is an example where you first give a deposit and then within 120 days, they will ship it to you once they get the minimum amount of orders needed. But you can see here, this is a pretty good looking statue. It's a Goku Super Saiyan 3. And here's also an important thing to note is that here you can see there are the dimensions. So if you buy the S plus or the S minus, and this is important for when you calculate the shipping in just a little bit. And it will also tell you the weight. If the weight is not on here, don't panic. You can always use the Google Translate. Like if you're using Google Chrome, you can right click and click translate to English. Or what I recommend is that you contact the supplier directly and you verify what the weight is and the dimensions are for the product shipping. You don't want the product outside of the box and then to weigh it and measure it there. You want it all packed, ready to go, and weighed and measured properly, because that will definitely affect what your total price would be when it comes to the shipping. So it was pretty easy to find the product there. But now let's talk about the shipping agent. So as I mentioned, these platforms, they do not ship outside of China. In very, very, very rare cases, there's maybe 1 or 2 people that I found that actually ship outside of China. So you want to see if they offer inspections and returns. When you're using these Chinese platforms, there's a 7-day grace period where you can return the product, no questions asked. And if the shipping agent can open up the product and verify that it's the right product, the right color, the right size, before shipping it overseas, it will save you a bunch of hassle in the future, especially if you send the wrong product and then the customer wants a refund. It gets really difficult to return the product back to China. Do they have an insurance plan? Let me show you a story that happened to me recently. There was a person that wanted to buy a new car bumper. It was like an accessory for a new Honda CR-V. And we went through the whole process. The order was fine. It was shipped through the regular channels. But when the product arrived, it actually broke. And when it broke, I had to work with the supplier directly to send a new product. And, I just bit the cost for that one. But it's good to know that there's an insurance plan that you can get, and it can cover you for anything that is valuable and can break. So if it's a high ticket item, like something worth over $300, I recommend you get an insurance plan to cover you for any lost packages or damaged packages. If it's something cheaper, you can just get the standard insurance plan where they can offer like $30 or $50, no questions asked, for any damage that happens, and then they're willing to ship a new one if you already get it. Does the freight forwarder, the shipping agent, have transparent tracking? So when you buy a product, will you be able to see exactly where it's at in the logistics process? Of course, the shipping from the supplier to the freight forwarder may not be so transparent, but at least from the freight forwarder until the final destination, is it easily tracked to be able to do any kind of verification of the product? And this is especially important when you're using payment processors. And stable pricing. The pandemic definitely influenced the pricing of freight forwarders and shipping overseas, and it can be frustrating. So you don't want a freight forwarder whose prices fluctuate greatly, just like Bitcoin. You don't want the prices to go up 50% and affect your profit margins overnight. You want to be a little bit careful on exactly how that pricing is. So let's go into an example of how you would find the product price when it comes to shipping. So as you can see, we can use this as a reference. Let's go 60, 42, 40. So on my website, if you go to borderlesscommerce.net, you can click on shipping. I'm going to say the weight is about 15 kilograms. Then here it says 60, 42, 40. Now, again, it's always best to confirm with the supplier the exact shipping dimensions, not the product dimensions. I'm going to be picking the United States, and then it's going to go ahead and calculate the cost. Here you can see there's already estimates from my previous calculation. But yeah, you can see it's not cheap for this product. And that's because the dimensions are pretty abnormal for it to go through conventional shipping. Of course, there's the sea freight that's an option, but when it comes to air freight, it can be expensive. So it's always good to check this before you start advertising that you're going to be selling this product to your friends or family, because you want to make sure you do the math properly, because if you don't do the math properly, you will end up losing money. So now, speaking about the math, let's talk about the math. But before we talk about the math, we got to thank today's video sponsor, which is myself. So if you're looking for a platform or a place where you can learn about sourcing from all platforms in China, like 168, Pinduoduo, Taobao, and how to run everything 100% yourself without stepping foot inside of China, you can consider checking out my course that I've made for you guys, because you guys have requested it. And in this, you will be able to get exclusive shipping contacts, and as well a built-in calculator to get your business idea started. So if you're thinking about an e-commerce idea and you don't know how to execute or find the product or use the platforms, this goes into great detail on exactly how to start from scratch. So anything that you do with this website and any purchase you do will support my channel, and I would greatly appreciate it. So now let's talk about doing the math. What do you need to calculate if you are going to do this business? And this is all before you actually start promoting it to a customer. So you need to know the product price. And as I just showed you with my Goku example using the Dragon Ball Super, you can see the product price right there. You're going to need to calculate the domestic shipping cost. So the cost from the supplier to the freight forwarder inside of China. You're going to need to calculate the international shipping, of course, taxes. Now, this may not apply to your country if they are friendly with imports. I know in the US, there's a threshold of an amount that you can send to China without having to pay tax, but that's changing, or that may be changing in the future. And then your profit margins, because you got to you got to run a business. You can't just be running and breaking even. You got to make sure you make your money. And then that is your final price. So how do I figure out the exact quantity I should be charging my customers or the group that I'll be making? So here's an example that I will be showing you where you have the product cost of the product. Up here is the B2C. So this is mainly like the drop shipping. And this is the B2B. We're not going to cover the B2B in this one, just a B2C. So let's just say the product is 100 RMB and it costs 5 kilograms. I know that the domestic shipping is usually fixed. Like on the website, you'll be able to see how much the domestic shipping would be, but it usually ranges between 5 to 10 RMB. And then the cost per kilogram of the international shipping, once you figure out the dimensions and the weight, and you can always get the exact, not the exact amount, but the estimate amount on my website. So let's just say it's going to cost me 300 RMB to ship it. Now, the import taxes, this depends on your country, but I'm just going to leave it 5%. And the warehousing. So if you are using a fulfillment center like Amazon FBA or maybe a fulfillment center in your home country, you got to consider some of the warehousing costs that may be involved, like picking and packing cost and then the shipping to the end customer. But if you're not using a warehouse fee, then you can just put 0 for this. But in this case, I'll put it's about maybe 20 RMB per order to be processed from the warehouse to the end customer. And lastly is your profit margin. In the B2C model, you can't get as greedy as you can with the B2B because you're getting a huge deal on the product when it comes to shipping it in bulk. So here you can see you can like bump up the profit margin crazy. But for this one, let's just go with a 40% profit margin. Now, you want to also consider that if someone's already selling this product, you can go on Amazon or eBay to get comparables to see what they're selling the product for, just to have an idea. But if I want to be able to sell a product that costs 100 yuan, okay, and it costs me about 300 RMB total to ship right there, you would need to sell the product at the end customer price to around $97. And that will give you around $40 profit per product. So this is just an idea of how you can actually calculate the profit margins for your business if you were thinking about getting started with this. So that's how you can calculate and do the math. But now let's talk about starting the business. So now you found the product. You already have a shipping agent that can help you with shipping, inspections, making sure everything's happening correctly. And then you've done the math and you know that the business will be profitable because you've done the comparables and you can at least protect your profit margins. So what is the next step? This is what I like to call the pre-order group. This is where you can do it for free. As I mentioned earlier, when you're picking a product, you want to make sure it's from your close friends and family, people that you trust and trust you, and they know that you're going out on a business venture and you're not going to kind of scam them. So make sure that is clear because you want people that are forgiving and aren't going to ask for chargebacks and create huge problems. So my challenge to you is if you can find 5 people within your friends and family that can join this group, you can make a WhatsApp group or whatever your social media you use. And when you use that group, then you can do a pre-order list. So you know how like in video games, before the video game comes out, there's a pre-order window where you can get like bonuses, extra downloadable content, etc. The same concept where you get a pre-order group and you can use PayPal or whatever method you want to receive the funds, Zelle. It can be something direct banks transfer, whatever your country is comfortable with, use that method to receive the funds for 5 people. That's not too much to ask for. It's for 5 people. So at this point, you can start ordering once you've received 5 pre-orders from your close friends and family for the product that you want to test. So how will the fulfillment work? Well, With the money you just got from that pre-order group, you want to pay your suppliers. Like I just showed you with the Goku Super Saiyan 3 Dragon Ball. You can see that I can just pay the supplier and start the process. I've already done the math, right? So I know exactly how much it costs and to make sure that all the money goes to the right places. After you pay the supplier, you want to make sure that the product arrives at the warehouse to ship it overseas. So once you ship it overseas, at that point, you can keep the customer updated in the group you created on the status of the order. So they can, the more transparent you are with the customer, the more comfortable they will be buying from you in the future. If you do well during this trial phase, I'm pretty sure one of your friends or family, they know a friend of a friend that is also interested in buying these kinds of products, and they can refer you, and it's like a snowball effect. But you got to start rough and just try it once or twice by yourself before going in on the deep end. So then once the customer receives the product, you can keep the profits that we measured in the profit calculator. Now, some considerations when doing this. You want to make sure that you have a solid returns and refund policy. Now, you may not have a website all set up because you're just trying this out, but you want to be thinking about this when the time comes to be actually deal with this, because it's going to happen. Especially when you get successful, you are going to run into issues where the customer wants a refund and you just need to deal with it. So what I recommend you guys do is to have a system in place to check the product before it leaves the country. Because once the product leaves the country, it cannot come back unless you pay taxes on it. I know it sounds weird, but in China, anything that comes to China has to go through customs, and you have to pay taxes through it unless like you're a diplomat doing diplomatic channels. But the point is, you don't want to deal with that hassle because shipping to China is expensive. Another exception is if you make a form saying this product is for testing, it needs to go to this warehouse to pass a certification, and then we need to bring the product back to China, then you can bypass the customs. But that's very, very rare cases and usually meant for very large businesses. So when customers receive the wrong product, or better yet, when the supplier sends the wrong product, sometimes it's good to have this system in place. So I just mentioned it's good to have inspections set up so that you can prevent these problems. When the supplier sends the wrong product, it will happen. It may not happen at first, but it's going to happen eventually. It's good to deal with it when it's inside of China. You can work with your freight forwarder to go ahead and ship the product back to the supplier and have them ship the right product. I've had some scenarios where I was able to prove that I took pictures of the shipping container and I showed them, hey, you sent the wrong products. Some of the items I ordered are not as specified when I ordered on your platform. And sometimes they're generous and they'll just send you another free one to make up for it, because that does happen sometimes. And lastly, you want to practice. Again, I just mentioned this is a free semi-risk way to try out the process. So when you start out, use it with your family and friends and be transparent with them what you're doing. You say, hey, I want to start an e-commerce store and I want to go ahead and test this process with you. Well, if they're comfortable with you, they'll be understanding and you can gain confidence. So if you go through the first round, you can gain confidence. And I suggest you go through a second round with your customers or your friends. Be like, hey, do you know a friend that may also be interested in this product that's coming out? And you go ahead and do it like 2 or 3 times before you invest anything. Because you should be getting profits based on these pre-orders, right? If you do everything correctly and it's all smooth. And you can use that money to then invest on a front-end website to capitalize on the business later on. So now let's go into the Q&A. If there are any Q&A in the session, it seems like there's no chat going on in Q&A. That's fine. So I also want to ask the audience, if you're watching this on the replay, if you like this kind of content, and if you want me to do this more frequently based on different topics you decide. If so, please let me know in the comments down below. Thank you for watching. If you want to know how to go deeply into finding the product niche, I highly suggest you watch this video right here.